And one block ahead of us is our northbound street called Macquarie Street.
Okay.
In between, we have Franklin Square. Now, it's only Tuesday. On a Friday night, they have food vans and free music and dancing, trying to make our city feel like a big village. But what Franklin Square was originally was our first government house.
Wow.
But the governor that lived there was a British governor, and he was a bit of a whinger, and he said, "It's too noisy here in Hobart Town." Now, we're talking 1830s.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think so. The whales in the Derwent are so loud. You could walk across their backs and nary get your foot wet. Yes, I think he was prone to exaggeration. But before we leave this wall, a lot of people, I'll get back to the old governor, but this wall here was the sea wall. So look through there and see how far we've reclaimed that land forward.
Oh.
So people ask, what's the road up there and the road down here no different? Well, it was the sea wall. This is where the sea came right up to, but it was shallow and marshy, and we have a very, very, very deep drop-off just out there. So they reclaimed the land back to the very deep drop-off, which is now the second deepest natural harbour in the southern hemisphere next to Rio de Janeiro. So we're going up Davy Street and we're about to pass St David's Park. This is St David's Park on the left. Now this was the first cemetery of Hobart. So from 1810 to 1910 everybody was buried in St David's Park, but in 1910 they decided it was too small, too close in, and they decided to change it into a park. And they took out all of the headstones that could be moved. There's still some very large ones in there. Now all the civilian headstones were made into a memorial walkway at the back. So if this road, Davy Street, is the front, the back by the Supreme Court is where you'll find that walkway if it interests you for the civilian headstones. All of the military headstones were brought here to Anglesea Barracks, which is the oldest working military barracks in Australia, opened there in 1811 by Governor Macquarie from New South Wales.
Okay.
So let's have a look at our little mountain up there, looking spectacular.
Sure.
It is a beautiful day.
Whoa.
And we're going to get some beautiful views today. So often the clouds just drop down onto our beautiful mountain and you can't see a thing. But this morning it is perfect.
Wow.
Hopefully very still as well. I was up there the other day where the bus would barely stay still. It was rolling and rocking around with the wind. Why do we have such intense wind here? It's not because of the cabbage. Oh, sorry, that was something else, wasn't it? Yes. It's because there is no land mass between Antarctica and Tasmania. Not an island, not a mountain, not a tree to slow the wind down.
Wow.
So as the wind leaves Antarctica, the ice of the shelves of Antarctica, it sweeps across the Southern Ocean, getting faster and harder and colder until it smacks into the very bottom part of our island, which is the Huon Valley, and comes right across our island in waves. Now these beautiful homes in this area here called South Hobart is where the very wealthy of early Hobart lived. So if you had a lot of money in the 1830s, 1840s, you would have lived here in South Hobart.
Wow.
Is anyone old enough to know who Errol Flynn is?
Yeah,
Sometimes
sure.
no. He grew up in that house there, being born in Hobart. He never used to admit that he was from Australia. He wasn't very happy here as a child. His father was a headmaster of one of the 3 boys' schools here in Hobart, and he was expelled from all 3, including the one his father was the headmaster of. So he took off to the Americas to make his fortune, which he certainly did, and he never returned. So this area here, the wealthy would live here. Why do you think they would live here instead of on the waterfront? These days, if you have a lot of money, you want to live on the water. The most expensive houses are on the water. But South Hobart up here, which is now a lot of private hotels and a lot of consulates along here as well. They buy them or rent them, I'm not sure, but they're beautiful old homes. Because the waterfront was a nasty place back in the day. It really was. When you'd been on a ship for weeks and weeks, even months, coming across here from Britain or Europe, you couldn't be happier to get off that ship and come into what was known as the town of taverns. Yes, Hobart had the most public houses in the early 1800s than any place in Australia. And the sailors revelled in getting drunk, swearing, fighting and falling down. So the waterfront was a nasty, loud, smelly place, and certainly not somewhere where anybody would like to be if they were gentry. So the very wealthy people who had carriages could live up here in South Hobart and look down upon the waterfront and go there when necessary. Now as we come up here, you might see some signs out the front of people's places protesting a cable car. So it's a very big thing here to protest the cable car. There's been many submissions since the first one in 1986. Just up this driveway on the left, you'll see the signs, I mean, no cable car. So this is mostly from the people who live in this area because it would come across their homes. If you look out to the mountain there, to the forward right, that front view is the most famous. It's called the Organ Pipes, and it's made of Jurassic dolomite, and it's very, very, very famous for rock climbing, for abseiling, and there's many tracks that go around the Organ Pipes as well, so people can get up very close and personal with that feature. Now as you see, the mountain has quite a flat top. So the very first person that we know of, European-wise, to come to this island was Abel Tasman in 1642. Now he doesn't mention the mountain, and all captains and all ship people of those early times, they wrote down everything they saw because they had to try and make maps, they had to make landmarks, and he doesn't mention, he's the only one who doesn't mention the mountain at all, which makes us think probably, most likely, that it was under cloud the entire time he was here, which wasn't very long. He found the water to be too rough. He couldn't anchor his boat safely. He tried very hard to get a Dutch flag on the land, eventually having to send his carpenter swimming in with the flag to put it on the land. Now, people at that time didn't swim. Maybe the Dutch did, but the British certainly didn't. So never does it say, and the carpenter returned to the ship safely. That's what I want to know. I've been worried about that for the last 20 years, but I will get past it eventually. Did the carpenter get back? I don't know. So they placed a flag on the land, they left, and never to return. But the people who were here for quite a long time, on and off during the mid-1700s, were the French. Now they actually named this mountain Table Mountain because of its flat top. And it wasn't till well after the British were here, probably about 8 to 10 years after their settlement in 1804, that they finally changed the name to Mount Wellington. And that was at the end of the British-French War with Napoleon. And when Napoleon was beaten and sent off to an island, the people here were so very British, and they wanted to show, they wanted some grand gesture to show the Duke of Wellington how much they appreciated their sons no longer having to go to war with the French. And they looked around this little settlement of Hobart Town, looked up at the Table Mountain and said, you know what, that's a grand gesture, and we shall call it Mount Wellington. And it has been that from 1812 right through to now, but now about 20 years ago we included the indigenous name of Kunani. Kunani means place of water, which is exactly what this mountain is. Hobart is settled in a very strange place because the mountain changes our weather system to such a degree that we are the second driest capital city in Australia, next to... You all know it's Adelaide, don't you?
Yeah, sure.
We're not very far behind them either. It's particularly dry here most of the time, and it is because of the changes the mountain does to our weather. Just on our west coast, you don't measure the rainfall in centimetres or millimetres, we measure it in metres. The east coast has nice, reasonable rainfall. Up north we've got rich dairy and great soil, but just around this southern part, around the mountain, we are very, very dry. So water, that's what this mountain is all about. When the first boats arrived here in 1804, they were about 9 kilometres that way, and they thought they'd found water. They got off the ships, tasted the water and realised it was not good. They gave themselves a little bit of time to try and find better water. They came around to the front where we've just come from. They found fresh water running down there. Tasted it, loved it, followed it back to its source and found out it was this mountain. And that's where Hobart town started to develop, around the mountain. They eventually called the water the Hobart rivulet. And it comes off the mountain in about 3 different ways. Now the main way, which is the always never-ending way, which is not always a huge amount, but is always there, is where it sucks it up from under the ground. It filters it up through that Jurassic dolomite stone, and then it leaks out of the mountain from about halfway. So our mountain is 1,271 metres above sea level, and about halfway is the 720 metre mark, where we will start to see the water coming out. We've had no rain for quite a while. We've had no snow for quite a while, which is the other 2 ways that we get great rushes of water coming down the mountain. A heavy snowdrop, and it can snow at any time of the year up there. We also have a lot of rainfall that comes down the mountain in great torrents. But none of that we've had lately, so what we're going to see today will only be what comes out naturally of the mountain. Of course, it does not sustain the city now, the size it is today. We have the water from the River Derwent to do that, which was also a fresh source but wasn't found till quite a few years later. So the water that comes off the mountain now is for everyone still. So the mountain itself is not a national park, not a city park. National parks are left completely natural as far as possible. City parks can be well over-engineered. But this is something in between called a reserve for the people. And that means this water can never be sold. It is always available for everybody. And anyone is free to go and get some at any time that they want. Very sadly, just recently, and I don't know why, after all these years, over 200 years of people drinking that water, the government has decided, or the council, sorry, I'll blame the council for this one, has decided they must put a sign that says not clean water. Have a look at this bus stop as we go past. I'll get back to that again. That is the funniest bus stop we've ever seen. Now, if you did get to glance in there, we'll go past it again in a minute, because obviously, as you saw with Paul, all the buses have to come through here because we're Australians and we do like to quick stop at the pub. Oh, it's not open! 4 minutes, sorry guys. I tried. So if you did get a glance in that bus stop, I'm not sure whether the locals are saying the buses don't come here often enough, or whether we just really like our creature comforts. There's a couch and a bookcase, a garbage bin, a coffee table, and I'm told in winter there's a hot chocolate machine as well, so not really sure about that. It certainly doesn't happen where I live. But this suburb is called Ferntree, And this suburb is the coldest one, I think, in Hobart. Not the coldest one in Tasmania, that's Liaweedy. But this is the coldest. Yes, there's nothing coming down this waterfall here at the moment. So very little water coming out at the moment. But in my opinion, Ferntree, which is a beautiful little suburb, is the coldest because we're right at the base of the mountain here in Ferntree. The sun, obviously, as we all know, sets in the west and the mountain is to the west. So it gets dark here about 4 p.m. in winter, which is very early. So we'll go past the last few tough people houses that I could never live here in Ferntree. And then once we go past all the houses and we get onto Pinnacle Road itself, there'll be 5 gates. Now the gates are for safety reasons. Sorry, bad road.
Wow.
The gates are only for safety reasons. A lot of people see the gates and say, what time does the mountain close? It can't close at a time because it is a place for the people, the reserve for the people. It cannot be closed because somebody feels like closing it. It's only closed for 2 reasons, and one of them is not snow. It's only closed for wind or ice. If the ice or wind becomes dangerous, the rangers will close some of the gates. They'll start with the top one and work their way down depending on the amount of danger. .205 through gate 1, ascending, changing to 64. Alright, we've passed all the houses, we've gone through the first gate and we are now on the Pinnacle Road. It's funny, one day we were coming up here and we'd gone a fair way without seeing a car, and a lady asked me, if this is the road up, where's the road down? I said, no, same one. Yep, she's nice and skinny in places, and I'm really enjoying the small bus when I used to drive the big ones, because that's a bit too exciting at times. This one's not quite as suspended. Sorry guys in the back, but we'll do our best to go a little bit more slowly for you. Alright, we are on the Pinnacle Road, the first road built in the 1830s. Now, why did they build a road up the mountain? So when they first came and settled here, the men of the settlement started climbing the mountain, and they would come back to the settlement and say things like, oh, it is so beautiful up there. The air is even cleaner. The water tastes even better. The views are amazing. And the ladies of the settlement got very sad. Now you can imagine what they were wearing, the British ladies in 1830. Whalebone corsets, petticoats after petticoat, tons of them, and great big dresses. They weren't allowed to slip into a pair of jeans and Nikes and run up the mountain at any cost. So the poor ladies were sitting down the bottom listening to the men boast about how wonderful it was. So because I've had a good look at you all and decided you look like amazing men, I know that if your lady wanted something very, very much, you would give it to her. And if you couldn't give it to her, you would compromise. That was a yeah. So compromise it was, and the men did compromise. They said, we will build a road to where the water starts to come out of the mountain so that the ladies can go up there and take the waters. So they built a road. Here we go through gate number 2. They built a road to 720 meters above sea level and built a day spa for the ladies called the Springs. And they built it of wood. We have so much stone on this island, they built it of wood. And it burned down. So they built it of wood. And it burned down. So they rebuilt it of wood. And third time and you're out. They didn't rebuild it.
Uh-oh. Ooh. Oh.
Now, I want you to look at these trees. There's some good sized trees here, isn't there? We don't cut them down for your viewing pleasure. You will see that they will naturally get smaller and smaller and thinner. If you look at the leaves as well, you'll see many different kinds of leaves, many different kinds of trees. As we get higher and higher, most of the weaker trees will drop out and one tree will continue all the way to the top. And that is, of course, the eucalypt, the toughest tree in the world. So the eucalypts make it all the way to the top. Gum trees, when we get to the top, you'll see that they are the only ones surviving and they are all the same. But they get so small because of the lack of nutrients and everything else. They're battling up there. They're battling the wind. They're battling the sleet and the snow and the lack of nutrients in the soil. So they get so small and withered looking. I actually refer to them as Australian bonsai. So look at the trees around here, with all the different kinds, and then compare that to what you're going to see when we get to the top. So they naturally thin themselves as we go up and up and up. But we are going to, I hope, if there's room for us to stop at the first lookout, we're going to pull up there with Paul's bus and we'll all get out and have a bit of a look. Lots and lots of tracks. You just saw some beautiful tracks going down there, some other ones that have been carved through the mountain. Now all tracks on this mountain, by the way, were handmade, and all maintenance to these tracks is hand done as well. They never bring machines up here. $205. Alright, I was planning to stop here, so if there's room, I'm still going to do that. Thanks, mate.
No.
See you up there.
See you.
Alright, he's chosen not to stop, which I think is the wrong move, but there you go. It's a boy.
Oh. Wow.
Just want to make sure that we don't get parked in. Alright, folks, so we'll hop out here, have a bit of a look at what we can see.